Hello and welcome to Photographic Connections, the podcast where we create connection to self, nature and others through the art of photography. My name is Kim Grant, the founder of Photographic Connections and your host for this podcast. And today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Valerie Misa onto the podcast. Valerie is a nature photographer and video creator based in Melbourne, Australia. She shares how having an academic upbringing brought her to suppress her creativity for many years, and how reconnecting with this side of herself through photography has allowed her to find a release from life's stresses and find some balance from her day job in the corporate world. She also shares why nature in particular is of great inspiration to her, and why she decided to start sharing her vision and photography on YouTube. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Valerie Misa. Hi Valerie, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast this week. Before we delve into your story, I must first thank one of our listeners called John, who very kindly introduced me to you and your work. And without him, you wouldn't be sitting here today. So thank you so much, John, for reaching out to me and putting me in contact with Valerie. Having looked at your website and everything, you're definitely somebody that's going to be of interest to our listeners. So I'm really looking forward to speaking with you today. And before we delve further into your photography specifically, I wondered if you could go back to the beginning of your photography journey and explain what got you into photography in the first place.
Yeah, sure, Kim. Happy to. And first of all, before I dive into that, I also have John to thank. And thank you very much for having me on your podcast as well. So John reached out to me and started watching a few of my videos, and then said, I'm going to suggest you join Kim's podcast. And it all happened very quickly. So it's been a very lovely surprise. So thank you. I guess, my photography journey, where do I start? It's I've been doing it for a little bit over 2 years now, so still very much relatively new to photography, I'd say. And I think it was a combination of events that really led me to photography. And perhaps the biggest event was losing my beloved golden retriever Scout. She was the light of my life. I'd say to my husband, she was my little girl in a dog suit. We're both very much, huge dog lovers. So we had 2 golden retrievers at the time. And so this was in 2021, and we lost to very tragic circumstances, and it was just devastating for me. And it happened during the height of the pandemic. So I guess that was the other major event there. But it probably sounds a little bit cliched somewhat, but I suppose when you lose someone or something that you love very dearly, it does give you reason to pause. And for me, it just stopped my world, and it really made me reassess and reevaluate where I was in life, in my direction, and what I wanted from my life. And I suppose because it happened during the height of the pandemic, that just magnified, I suppose, my grief and my emotions and everything I was going through a lot more during that time. Obviously, I suppose similar to a lot of people, I was working from home. I was doing incredibly long hours, very stressful with my job, and I just needed an outlet. I needed an escape, and I really can't think of a particular moment where it struck me that photography was for me. But I think I must have gone through a catalogue, and there was a sale on, and I'd seen some cameras on sale, and I'd always been sort of very creative. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to express a lot of that creativity growing up. And so I think it was at that stage where I just, wanted to express myself in a different way, an outlet. And I saw this catalogue, and I must have thought, oh, that's interesting. Why not try it? Try to take photos with something other than my smartphone. And then I just did a bit of research, and then I suppose I bought my first camera, which was a Fujifilm X-T4, and the rest was, sort of been history. I think similar to you, Kim, I describe myself as a nature photographer. I love landscapes. I love wildlife. I just love nature and capturing that and being able to, be out there in nature and in the outdoors and really just capturing moments that are special and that speak to me and that touch me in some way, and being able to relive that and sharing that with others, I suppose. So yeah, that's sort of been a snapshot of my photography journey to date.
Yeah, gosh, there's a lot you've been through over the past couple of years with everything that's happened. It's almost like a big change for you in many ways in direction, but also trying to find this way of balancing life, I guess. Because, I read on your website that you're a lawyer. So I imagine that the high powered sort of commercial side of that is very different to what you get now going out into nature with your camera and being able to express yourself creatively.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because of my day job and my career, I mean, up until losing Scout and going through the pandemic, I'd been, I think, sadly, and again, I think in a very cliched way, sort of living that typical life where I was very much career driven, climbing the corporate ladder. And it was sort of, it's an upbringing that has been instilled in me for quite a while. So my parents, first generation immigrants to Australia, and I suppose in a lot of ways very typical of the immigrant story. Leaving behind a life of hardship, and we were in fact actually refugees to Malaysia. So my parents left war-torn Vietnam, escaped that on a little fishing boat. We ended up in Malaysia, and then we ultimately got sponsored to Australia, where I had aunties and uncles living here. And so for my parents, it had always been, sort of trying to forge this life for their children. And it was very much an academic upbringing. And my parents were very traditional in that sense. So it was about focusing on academics. And that was pretty much, my life from childhood. And so I felt like I'd always had this creative side that I just couldn't really tap into. In a way, I was sort of inhibited, and because I had this path that my parents had in mind for me, and I sort of had to follow that because that was, I suppose, in some ways, their vision of success for them. It was you either ended up being a doctor or a lawyer, really, and there was really no other path, and I've just pursued that, and it's really all I've known. But it is obviously very stressful. It can be constant pressure cooker environment. And in a way, I think that really drove me to wanting to find something else that was quite different. And for me, photography has, in many ways, been sort of a sense of, or a way for me to escape the realities, I suppose, and the noise and the distractions and all of that I experienced through daily life. And I've really felt that it sort of was quite poignant during the height of the pandemic, and then obviously the grief that I felt with losing Scout.
I imagine there'll be a lot of people listening to this that can really relate to what you've shared there, especially with regards, I think, to the almost pressure we maybe face growing up from society or family members to go down a certain path at a certain route. And quite often it can be very much what society maybe expects of us as success, or these pressures of maybe what our parents maybe want us to do in terms of these careers in the corporate world, having this financial security. I guess a lot of people do face that, but I can only imagine from an immigrant perspective, it's heightened in many respects because of the situation your family have been in through the generations. And it's interesting to hear there that throughout all of that, you've always had this creative side within, and it's almost been like this part of you that's been wanting to be expressed, but of course had to be almost pushed down for many years. And now to be able to be in a situation where you feel almost maybe out of necessity, but maybe out of, and maybe just feeling a bit more empowered to begin to explore that and have it in balance with the corporate life as well. You know, it's not like you've given all that up. It's very much now bringing it into a balance for you so that you can have that, the work life, but also have this release, which I think balance is so important in life, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you put it so well, Kim. I think it's perhaps subconsciously this sort of eternal search for balance, and maybe it just happened at the right time for me in life where things just started to align, and being able to find this path has been really liberating, and I suppose now, as an independent adult, making my own decisions, and finding that freedom. In a way, it's perhaps a search for freedom and finding that balance. And I wish I found it sooner. That's all I can say, Kim. All this time, I don't know why I hadn't picked it up earlier, but very much glad that I did.
Yeah, I almost feel, all of our stories are so different. And I feel like we all discover these things in life when we need to. And quite often it comes out of a necessity because of something happening. And of course, the passing of your golden retriever was something along with the pandemic that you just felt inside, now is the time to maybe do something for myself, to find this release. And, I found photography and creativity very early because I was in a very dark place early on in my life. And it's like I needed to find a release very early on. But I find for a lot of people, it's when they reach maybe late 20s, 30s, and even for many people, middle age, there's like this, not quite a crisis, but it's like something happens and life is very much put into perspective. And that's where they start to explore themselves a bit further. But we all, I think, get there when the time is right for us. And we can look back and say, oh, I wish I'd discovered this sooner. And of course, there'll always be a part of us that has that desire. But equally, it's like, this was the time for you. And it just feels like it's like you say, been very liberating. And it's almost like, I wonder where, now that you can tap into this creative side that's been in the background for many years, it's like, I almost wonder where is it going to take you now? It's quite exciting.
Yeah, definitely it is. And you're right. I think sometimes if you try to force a situation, it just doesn't happen. Right. And so it's nice when things, from my perspective anyway, when it just falls into place naturally and it feels natural, feels organic that way. But yeah, I think for most of us, we have a routine, we have a sense of comfort, we have a safety net, and we stick within that. And then it just over time becomes sort of the norm and you don't really realize it. And it takes sometimes, a significant moment in your life, whether that's positive or negative, for sort of the penny to drop, doesn't it? And then you to realize or to feel empowered enough, as you said before, to want to take action, to change circumstances, to do something different, to leave that, I think, that sort of security blanket, or that, for me, I think a large part of that has also been the fear factor, fear of the unknown, fear of uncertainty. But I think once you do, then your ability to explore the world around you, explore new things, new experiences, take on new challenges, it comes so much more easily.
Yes, it's great that you mentioned there this fear, because we all feel it. It's like you say, coming out of the security blanket and the safety of what we've always known, how we've been brought up, the people, the places, the things we've always done. It's like to put ourselves into new situations, meet new people, try new things. It can be really scary at first, but I almost feel it's very necessary to us discovering ourselves, discovering who we truly are, discovering our real passions and interests, and also being able to express ourselves. Because when we're not able to express ourselves, the internal battle we feel can be so deep and difficult. And we always feel this resistance and this almost trapped energy. But when we start to try new things and experience new things and work out what we enjoy and what we don't enjoy and meet new people and have new experiences, it opens us up and as you rightly say there, and gives us new opportunities and new ways of expressing ourselves. And I find it interesting that you mentioned that you've always had a creative side, but you never felt able to almost express it or explore it. And I remember reading that you used to do quite a lot of drawing and painting when you were younger, but for some reason photography felt a bit different to you. So what do you think it is comparing the drawing and painting to photography? Why do you think photography has given you more, I guess, from a therapeutic perspective?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed drawing as a kid growing up, Kim, and doing a lot of sketching, and it just sort of fell by the wayside. I actually was very good with portraits, and maybe from my perspective as a child, it looked better than if I were to look back on it as an adult. But people would say, "Oh, well, you're very artistic," and then I think it's like anything. If you don't keep practicing and you don't pursue it, then you sort of your skills and you let it slip away. And so I did it during, I think, my primary school years, and then in high school it was again very much reinforced by my parents. Don't do silly things like that. You can't earn a living, being an artist. Focus on your academics. And so I stopped that. And then in uni, actually, I started to dabble in acrylic painting. But I think it was always better in my head than in reality. It's much more difficult putting paintbrush to paper. But I loved, that exercise and going through the process and just, free form and just letting my mind wander. And I think photography is similar, I think, in terms of, the post-processing, and that's what I really enjoy as well when I do go back into editing. And it's about creatively expressing what I saw or what I felt out there with the image that I captured, or sometimes editing in a way that I hope it was what I had seen and maybe not so much realistic in terms of, adding an artistic element to it, I suppose. So I think in that sense it's very similar, but there's an aspect of reality in it, and it's I think it goes back to a balance of reality and art, or artistic expression. It's for example, with say long exposures for seascapes, I love that because it's what I can't physically see through a long exposure with my own eyes, but what I can imagine in my mind, and then to see an image that's created, the ethereal feel of it, the movement in the water or the flow of the water, and how that's all captured. We can't possibly see with our eyes, but it's amazing what you can see what a lens of a camera can capture, or with wildlife, or in the moment, just capturing a certain expression that's just priceless, a certain bond, a certain behaviour, which I certainly could never draw or paint. But being able to freeze that moment in time and then relive it through, in a way, my own creativity with editing it or how it was composed. I think it's just the magic of all of that coming together. So it's a little bit hard to describe there. Yeah.
I think these sort of things always are, aren't they? Because it's a very internal thing. And when we try and put words to how we're feeling in these moments and what it does for us, it can be very challenging because there's almost not words to describe it because of that internal feeling. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I guess with photography, we almost have a lot more options of what we can maybe do with it. Because of course, with painting and drawing, there's of course different things we can paint and draw. There's different mediums we can use, different techniques. But I guess with photography, it's much more instant. You know, you can create an image in a matter of seconds. Of course, a lot longer if you're really considering a lot of things in terms of composition and settings and all that kind of stuff, and the time that it takes us to see the image in the first place. But with regards to comparing it to painting and drawing, it's a much more instant process. And then going home and editing it, it's beautiful. And we can also take it out with us and do it as we're walking, as well as sitting down, as you would do with most painting and drawing techniques. And one thing I thought was really interesting that you spoke about there was, you know, when you were growing up, it was almost like not being allowed to do the creative stuff because it didn't earn money. And this is one thing I would love to see change in the world. And I think it is starting to change, actually, is this idea that we cannot make money as creatives. Of course, it can be a lot more challenging in the beginning, but I've been looking a lot recently into archetypes. And one archetype is this idea of the starving artist. And that's what so many of us are brought up with, this idea that if you want to be an artist, you're never going to make any money. But I think the way the world's changing now, there's so many ways that we can be creative and use our creativity, especially, I guess, if we go more into self-employed and business ways. It is possible. And I think with all the stresses in the world right now, it's important that more people who have a natural creative gift or talent, put it out there in the world to inspire others and to maybe teach and support others with their own creativity, which is beautiful and will help people in the process. And I guess that gets on nicely to the fact that you find photography very therapeutic. So I wondered if you could delve a little bit further into this.
Yeah, sure, Kim. So for me, I think the biggest benefit has been just the mental health benefit, and this ties nicely with being a nature photographer and loving nature and loving the outdoors and being out there, and for me it brings a lot of solace, a lot of peace and tranquility. And when I'm out there, I could be lost in my own world, and I seriously could be lost for days if no one were to come and get me. And it's just the calmness that comes with it, and so through photography, there's just something about pressing that shutter release button and just being in the moment and just capturing whatever it is that's in front of me or around me. It's just such a soothing, calming, peaceful feeling, and I think that's where it has. I have a very busy mind, Kim, incredibly busy. It never switches off. Like I cannot turn it off even when I sleep at night. It's just constantly ticking away. But when I'm out there and it's like a sort of almost a meditation sort of moment. I'm in my zen, I'm in my moment, and I just tune out everything else. And I hear the wind and the sounds of the ocean and the waves and the birds and all of that, and it's all I hear, and pretty much all I see is just what's immediately around me. And in that sense, the worries of daily life, I suppose, just disappear for a time, and that's where I find my peace. It's my zen place, I suppose, and it goes back to, for me, this whole I suppose theme about providing a means of escape for me, and it's just the peace that comes with it, and I think that's most often what I search for, during, as I go through the daily grind, and I'm sure most people do. It's just that moment where you're not worried and bothered and concerned about all the noise and distractions in daily life. So I think that's the therapeutic nature there.
I think one thing I'm really trying to get to the bottom of is how nature photography specifically, it seems to massively enhance the well-being and therapeutic elements of photography. Now, of course, every style of photography has its therapeutic benefits, but there's something about being out in nature, getting out there and immersing ourselves in the beauty that massively enhances that sense of peace, that sense of solace. One thing you mentioned on your website is getting completely lost in time. You lose track of time when you're out there with your camera. It's almost getting into this flow state, which I'm hearing more and more people speak about. I guess because it gets us out there and gets us away from where we live, where we work, and everything else in our life. And it gets us into that environment. And I guess, is that kind of how you see it in terms of connecting it with nature? What for you personally do you think the nature element, how does that enhance it for you?
Yeah. I suppose as someone who's always loved the outdoors, and I have to admit I just have a natural affinity for animals, and probably more than I do for people, which is probably a strange thing. But with photography, I've found that it has given me more reason to want to get out there, and that's through I suppose my desire to capture these special moments. And so every opportunity I get, I want to be out there. If I've got a camera in hand, that's fantastic. And I think prior to photography, it was the case that I always understood that the benefits of nature, getting fresh air, feeling, the warmth of the sun on your face. But back then, perhaps it was more so about the physical benefits of being out in nature, being active, looking after my physical well-being. But since picking up photography and since the pandemic, I've really become much more cognizant of the focus for me being shifted to now mental health and, the mental health benefits of being out in nature. And it just goes back to, the emotions and the feelings that I get when I'm out there. And it's really about, the peace and the calm and the soothing aspect that comes with it. And I think there is just so much beauty in the natural world around us. And because we're so used to this, especially in this day and age, our lifestyle of constantly being on the go, constantly being distracted by technology, and everything is moving at such a fast pace. When you're switched off from that, you're sort of forced to go back to more of your basics. And I think you're more in tune and aware of, your instincts and perhaps your emotions and what's around you. So I think you just look more outward than inward, I suppose. And being able to do that just heightens the sense of connection with what's around me more. So I'm not sure if I answered your question there, Kim. But yeah, for me, it's just the beauty in things that aren't man-made, I suppose.
I guess it's getting back to our natural state, isn't it? I don't feel we're meant to live in the way that we live in the modern day world. For those who still live in areas that are very connected with nature, generally speaking, statistically, they tend to be happier, they tend to be less stressed, they tend to be more active. It's interesting that for you, getting out initially was about that physical well-being, and now it's like more about the mental well-being. I think the beautiful thing about getting out there for our mental health is that we're also being physical. walking is actually one of the best things we can do for our physical health. But if you actually think, oh, I'm just going to go out for a walk, some people can do that easily. I try and go out for at least 2 walks a day. But for a lot of people, just simply going out for a walk, it's not enough. They need another reason. So if they can think about their mental health and adding it with a camera and being creative, you kind of forget you're walking when you're doing photography and that you're out there because you're more engrossed in everything else. And I guess it's bringing all of that together. Definitely, yeah. And I know that your getting involved with photography has also made you more aware of the fragility of the environment and about things like, wildlife protection and conservation. So I wondered if you'd be happy to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, those are issues I think that have always been dear to me. But I think prior to really, having the opportunity to immerse myself out there in the field, in the natural environment, consistently, I was more of, how do I describe this, sort of a passive bystander. I think if I can describe it that way, Kim. I knew these were issues I was passionate about, but you think about it for a fleeting moment and then life goes on and there's other things to worry about and other issues and priorities, and it sort of, takes a back seat. But in recent times, I've certainly become much more cognizant of, animal, conservation and protection and environmental conservation and the state that the world is in, and the footprint that we're leaving behind, and the importance of not only conserving for future generations, for humans, but for native wildlife and various species themselves. I feel very much that, there is a responsibility that we have, and I probably won't get into too much politics here, but, as humans, we have a massive impact on the world around us, and most of the time, a pretty negative impact. And when I look at the environment and I look at native wildlife, they're so innocent, and a lot of issues around, human development and progression, and always wanting to advance, and our sprawl, our urban sprawl development, all of that encroaching on their habitats. It's an important issue because I think it goes back to this point around balance, Kim, and yes, there are obviously interests that we have as a society to advance our well-being, but I think it can't come at such a high price and a cost to the environment and the natural world around us. So yeah, it's really excuse me, it's really driven me to become more active, not just be concerned about it and watch things unfold from the sidelines, but really, through getting involved in grassroots causes, through donations, through just raising awareness, starting the conversation. I think that all helps, and it does go away to, I suppose, doing my bit and doing what I can.
Definitely. Yeah. It's lovely that you have that mindset and that awareness now. And I guess maybe that's something that's going on in the world right now. A lot of people are so disconnected from nature. It's like, how can we care about something that we don't see, we don't connect with? And it's almost, people who do have this connection with nature, and a lot of nature photographers, we want to love the environment. We want to care for it. We don't want to leave anything. We don't, we want to be really conscious of how we're interacting with it and how we're living, but we need to have that connection in the first place to even become aware of and care about all of these issues that are going on in the world. So definitely getting out there with our camera helps that. And one of the beautiful things with you as well is that you don't just do photography, you also started your own YouTube channel, which is fantastic, being able to put yourself out there and film your journey. So I guess what made you decide to bring your photography into the YouTube space?
Yeah, it was all about sharing my experiences. That's how it all started. And in fact, my very first YouTube video wasn't a photography video. It was I think it was a hiking video. So shortly after, with I think it was at the end of 2021. I was living in the world's most lockdown city, Kim. Like, I think we when it finally lifted, all Victorians, like, we just bolted. We wanted to get out and just go wherever we could. And for me, so my husband, he's into hiking, and we thought, yeah, let's just get as far away from Melbourne or the city as we can. And we headed up, into the mountains and did a bit of hiking. And I think I had a GoPro at that time, and I just started to record really for our, sort of to document our own personal adventures and journeys. And I'd come home and we'd look through them, and then eventually I'd put 3 little things together. And I thought, well, this is fantastic. Like, why don't we just share it, so other people can discover these great hiking trails, and maybe we can share some tips around our experiences. So I posted that, and then as I started to do more photography, I thought, well, why don't I share my experiences? And really that was the idea behind the channel. For me, it was about sharing my photography journey and experiences and learnings with others, so that they could pick up things along the way that as I picked up, and hopefully through my mistakes and my learnings that I could help others with their journeys, and then ultimately to hopefully inspire people, because I just love being out there so much. As I've said, I don't think I could say it anymore, but I love being in the outdoors. And for me, it was, well, what better way to share that experience and raise that awareness, and give people the opportunity to come along for the journey with me than to post it, and so they can see. And hopefully for those who can't physically get out there for one reason or another, they could, in a way, sort of vicariously escape through my videos, but still find the enjoyment and the love for photography and the appreciation for nature through that means. That really has been the idea behind the channel.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
And I'm sure that's the same with yours, Kim, and comes with its own challenges, doesn't it?
It certainly can do. Yeah. It's interesting that your first video was about hiking. My first video was about conservation, and then it was a couple about walking in the mountains at the time, or there was one about walking in the mountains and just exploring Scotland, and then it kind of got on to just becoming known as a landscape photographer. So it's interesting that you began that way. And I spoke to Courtney Victoria recently as well. I'm not sure if you're aware of Courtney's work, but she does a lot on YouTube as well. And she started by filming, about around where she was living at the time, and almost doing this sort of travel documentary style stuff. So it's interesting that we've all kind of started with something else outdoors and then gone into more photography. And I have to mention, I was looking at some of your videos yesterday, and I came across one that's entitled "Learning to See and Feel Nature Through Photography, a Short Film." And I've got to say, when I started playing that video right from the onset, I felt something, both the visuals, your voiceover, the music. It was so incredibly beautiful, and you could just feel this deep meaning and inspiration in what you had created in that video. So I just would like to highlight that one particularly if anyone would like to look a bit deeper into your work and about this connection to nature. That's definitely a beautiful short film, well worth watching.
Yeah, look, thanks so much for your kind words, Kim. They actually mean a lot to me. And look, that video was something I thought about making for quite a while. And that's because the message in it is something I truly do believe in and is something that's dear to me. And I really wanted to convey how beneficial it can be if we approach our photography not from just perspective that it's a process. You get out there, you take a photo, and you go home and you might edit it. But if we see it more so as an opportunity to really live in the moment and be in the moment and immerse ourselves with our surroundings and be as one with our environment, I think. And that might sometimes mean that you put your camera away, right? And then you just don't worry about taking a photo. And sometimes for me, it's not, I find it relaxing, not worrying about having to make a video. And I just enjoy being out there and just being in the moment, which has been, a key focus of mine for the past few years. And I think if we see our photography through that lens, pardon the pun there, but if we see it from that perspective, it can be enlightening in so many ways and in so many different levels.
Yeah, definitely. And it's such a beautiful video with such a deep story. So yeah, I really hope many people listening to this today will go and watch that video and feel the things that you've just spoken about, because it's so beautiful. And Valerie, I just want to thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. And for anyone that's resonated with your story and everything you've shared today, I wondered if you could let us know where can we go to connect with you.
Yeah, sure. And look, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to you, Kim, for, taking your time to have this chat with me, this conversation. I know you're a very busy woman, and just for you to reach out and give me a bit of time, I really do appreciate that. So, and just to connect with, your listeners as well. So that's just highly appreciated of your time and the opportunity. In terms of where you can find me, as you mentioned, I have a YouTube channel, so Valerie Misa, and really that's the main platform where I share the adventures behind my photos, the stories behind them, and my learnings and just thoughts really on a lot of things photography related. Aside from my YouTube channel, my other main social media platform is Instagram. So Valerie Misa Photography there. I probably don't need to say much more about Instagram. But in terms of really sharing my photos, my main platform is my website, so valeriemisa.com. And as much as I love Instagram, we all know the limitations of that. So yeah, if it's where I share my favorite photos. And if you're interested in seeing photos in higher resolution, in more detail, the full photo, you can see that on my website. And I've got a few blogs on there as well, but I haven't really had much time to write those lately. YouTube has been quite time-consuming, aside from my day job, as you know. You can see you nodding there, Kim. And also recently Facebook. So I've just opened an account there, but I do prefer, I think, Facebook to Instagram, just being able to connect with followers more, and also to share photos, in higher resolution. So I promise I will be more active in that space. But yeah, so lots of ways you can reach out to me. And yeah, through my website, if you want to send me an email or anything like that, you can definitely drop me a note.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Valerie. It really has been a pleasure. And I'll link to all of the things you've just mentioned in the show notes below.
Thanks so much, Kim.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this week's podcast. It really does mean the world to me. If you'd like to get further involved with Photographic Connections, including joining our online community, you can find all the details at photographicconnections.com. And now that this podcast has come to an end, there's only one thing left for you to do. It's time to pick up your camera and head outdoors. There's so many incredible photographic opportunities just waiting for you to discover.